Um, I wanted to do this quick little video to teach you about the truth about werewolves. I've been meaning to do it for the longest time, but I've just been dealing with so much. If I have to pause for a sec, it's just because I'm expecting a parcel delivery. So I'll pause it and then come back. But this is a quick video because it doesn't need a lot of explaining the history of werewolves. Now, Wikipedia will say it goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks, and that with lycanthropy, with the lycanthrope, half man, half wolf. I'll put a couple of links in the description box below, but the truth is, werewolves actually go back to ancient Egypt with Anubis, the god with the dog's head. Remember, I've done videos before about the beast with red eyes. When you see the beast with red eyes, you're being called to go on a spiritual journey. You're basically being chosen, even as a child. If you see a beast with red eyes, I've written a book about it for children. If you see a beast with red eyes, it means that you've been given the gift of second sight, which is like infrared vision. It's way different to having clairvoyant abilities and the ability to see the future, and that it goes beyond that. It means that you have the ability to see time and death, or time and the living and the dead as one. So the beast with red eyes, is very popular in the Celtic and Pictish mythologies and folklore, and even here, like the beast of Bodmin Moor and all of that, here in the UK. When I hit the road and get to do my adventures, I want to investigate all these sorts of places. The Werewolf in London, actually, I found out a lot of it was filmed here in the Yorkshire Moors, in the moors here in Yorkshire, which is really cool. When I was taken to where it was filmed in that, it was the freakiest thing, because that movie scared the bejeebers out of me when I was a kid. But I grew up feasting on horror movies because of my dad, and which is why I want to make a lot of horror movies with the kids at my foundation. I've been writing a couple. Maybe I should do a werewolf one. I don't know. But anyway, so Anubis, the god with the dog's head, the god of funerary rites and, mummification, the preparation of preparing the bodies for the underworld, and the protection of cemeteries and all that. What people don't understand, or what people don't know about werewolves, is they are specifically the guardians of cemeteries and graveyards. Now, where you have the beast with red eyes, who are the guardians to things like ancestral rites, like monoliths and burial mounds, the burial places of, Celtic and Pictish royalty and all that sort of thing, noble people protecting the lands from heretical attack, and, people coming in to attack their faith, their religion, their connection to the gods, whatever. That's what the beast with red eyes are. When you encounter a beast with red eyes and you're fearful and it's chasing you and you feel under threat, and that's because you've encroached on ancestral territory where you haven't been given permission. But if you encounter a beast with red eyes and there is no fear other than like, oh my God, I'm seeing something with red eyes and it's scary, but it keeps coming back, but it's not doing you any harm, like it's not chasing you or coming after you in your dreams or anything like that, because in real life they will physically manifest in real life with your real eyes. You'll really see it, where you'll feel like you're being chased by, it's usually like a very hairy, large, muscular dog with red eyes, and they'll be showing their teeth. And they might even be drooling, but they will run faster than lightning when they come after you, because it means that you've encroached on lands or ancestors that they are trying to protect. It might mean that your ancestors might have been at war with the ancestors of the grounds that they're protecting. But that's primarily what the beast with red eyes does, is that they walk around the territory and protect the territory of ancient markings and ancient burial mounds. Whereas a werewolf specifically is specifically to guard the outside the gates of cemeteries and graveyards. Because the mythology came about, like the reason why they started coming out with all of it is because that we had, we have always had a lot of problems with people robbing graves, robbing the tombs where mummies were buried, and the story came about to protect the burial sites from grave robbers. And then, of course, it just took off from there. And then, we got the horror stories, and all the movies came out, and then everybody suddenly became afraid of werewolves and that. But they're not anything to be afraid of. They're there to protect the dead, and with werewolves specifically, graveyards and cemeteries from grave robbers. Um, Harking back to the days of when the ancient Egyptian tombs and that were being robbed, and all the riches and that stolen from the pharaohs, and so they came up with it's the same thing with the Cerberus, Trixie from the Soul Collector, the three-headed dog. Um, it's all the same thing. They specifically guard the gates to the underworld. They don't let anyone in or anyone out who isn't supposed to be there. The dead, especially bad people, try to escape the underworld, and the Cerberus is there to, Cerebus, sorry, is there to protect the gates to the underworld. So you can't escape, but you can't get in either. If you're not due to be there, then you won't be allowed in. So that's what Trixie, I call her Trixie because of my story. That's what that's there for. And then you've got the beast with the red eyes, which is for the monoliths and, like I said, the burial mounds and all of that to the ancient ancestors for the Celts and Picts. And then you've got the werewolves that go back to ancient Greece, but further back you've got Anubis, who's the Egyptian god for the dead and mummification and funerary rites and all of that. So werewolves are basically just a modern version of the dogs who are there to protect the dead. The reason why they howl at the moon and stuff like that is because that more people die at night than in the morning than during the day. More people die between the hours of 10 o'clock at night and 3 o'clock in the morning, I think it is, than any other time period, and more people die on a Sunday night going into Monday morning. More people die before a work day on a Monday than any other day of the week. So, them howling at the moon and that is because they know that souls are leaving their bodies and going to the underworld to be judged, and then they will be buried. So they're basically preparing themselves for the burials of the dead, which they're then there to protect. So when you get bitten and turned, you can only, obviously I'm talking about mythology here because it wouldn't happen in real life unless you're talking about rabies, which it is kind of. When you get bitten by a rabid wolf or dog or something, you get rabies and you go the same way sort of thing. And it slowly turns you. So when you get bitten by a werewolf, it's said that they only bite the ones who can turn. If you don't have it in you to be a guardian of the graveyards and cemeteries, you won't be turned, you'll just die. Or, yeah. But obviously in real life, you would get rabies, and what happens with rabies in that you salivate, you go a bit nuts, and yeah, it's not nice. But basically, all of that's been turned into all of this mythology and folklore and talismanic preparations for the dead has all been turned into what we now know as werewolves. And then of course they use werewolves and the mythology of werewolves in that, like I did a video the other day, to keep people away from things that the military or government are doing that they don't want them getting involved in, which is fair enough. If if they're kind enough to give you a warning to say keep away, then don't go butting your nose into anything that they don't want you knowing anything about, because it'll only come back on you in ways that you won't be wanting. So it's their nice, polite way of scaring the bejesus out of you to let you know we're doing stuff you don't need to be getting involved in. So just walk away. In which case, walk away, because they could do a lot worse than just putting on these little displays of mythology and folklore and that to scare you away from what they're doing. They could do a lot worse. So just kind of respect the boundaries and move away. So you will often see in a lot of stories and mythology and movies and that where the werewolves are hanging around cemeteries and graveyards and that, but that's because that's their purpose. They're there. They guard the perimeter. They're like security guards for cemeteries and graveyards to make sure that there's no grave robbing, which, as we know, is something that was very rife for centuries, right up until kind of, well, I mean, there's still people that rob them, but not as prolific as what it was like in the days of Burke and Hare and, the Victorian era and all that. It was rife back then. And even with medical experiments, when hospitals became a thing and they started doing surgery and that, obviously they used to rob graves, and they were doing that right up until even like the Cleveland torso murders, when they started just taking homeless people and prostitutes and, the destitute and that, and experimenting on them, operating on them and experimenting on them. They were still doing grave robbing and that back then. And that was like in the 1930s and 40s. So it's something they've been doing for quite a while. And so the lycanthrope, or the werewolf, the half man, half dog thing, the whole mythology has been around for a long time to stop people from robbing graves and robbing the bodies, and taking the treasures and that were being buried with the mummies and the pyramids and sarcophagi and all that when they were back in the ancient Egyptian days. So I just thought I would explain. So now you know. Now I'm thinking maybe I should do like because I've got my zombie apocalypse movie, and I've got my serial killer movie, my slasher movie. Maybe I should do a werewolf one, write a werewolf one. I haven't done that, and I have actually been looking at werewolf. I was looking at stuff on Twitter a few months ago, with a guy dressed up as a werewolf, and he had like hydraulic hooves, like legs and that, and he was learning to walk on them. And I said to my sons, "Oh my God, that's the kind of movie makeup and movie special effects and that I want. I don't want graphics and blue screens. Like, I want to limit graphics and blue screens to as I want to do everything old school as much as possible, and limit no AI, but limit CGI and like blue screens and that. Um, it just depends on how much money my little production company has, but yeah, I could totally do a werewolf one, but like, tell the truth, like do a horror movie about werewolves, about how they're actually kind of like Twilight, but how they're actually there to protect the graves and that. So maybe I could write a movie about some grave robbers, and the werewolves come and do like a whole thing and go after the grave robbers to retrieve the bodies and things that have been stolen. Because you have to remember as well that even in modern days where we don't use mummification and that, we still bury our loved ones with like wedding rings and jewelry and little trinkets and treasures and that people will still uh, rob the grave for. Unfortunately, it's disgusting. They curse themselves because it's sacred ground, and when you defile sacred ground, it always comes back on you. And then, of course, when I get out of here, I want to do Greyfriars Bobby, or Greyfriars Kirkyard, and I'll do everything that I need to do there and explain everything there. So, oh my God, I can't wait to get out of here. can I please just hurry up and get justice, because I'm so excited to get out of here and start making these shows. The United Kingdom is like for me personally, like a breeding ground of infinite possibilities of shows and podcasts I could be doing based on the occult, supernatural, the occult, paranormal, folklore, mythology, all of it. I mean, I've already started with a couple of the videos that I've done recently with local, lore and mythology and that to do with gnomes and and all of that. So yeah, so just a little lesson about werewolves. So have fun. I'll speak to you later. Ka kite anō. Mwah.